It was such an emotional tug of war between having hope and feeling hopeless the next day. Hello, my neurospicy people. Today we are diving in. We are getting straight into it on the truth about ADHD after diagnosis. I've been post-diagnosis for like 6 months now. I got diagnosed with inattentive ADHD 2 days after my 30th birthday last September. It's now 6 months later in March of 2023, and I'm here to report the real deal on what it's like having that validation of the diagnosis, but also navigating everyday life knowing that you are neurodivergent. What I was expecting after my ADHD diagnosis was probably a combination of a sense of relief, finally being able to accomplish tasks without the burden of unmotivation, feeling more connected to myself, and I had a really big hope that I would find that right medication pretty quickly and that it would help me get back to a sense of myself and finally experience that like coveted feeling that we've been missing our whole lives of just being able to carry out tasks and follow through with things. Reality check. What I've actually ended up experiencing has been far different than the rose-tinted idea of productivity and self-worth that I had originally pictured. One thing that I feel like isn't talked about enough concerning ADHD post-diagnosis is the amount of time that it takes to just find your flow again. I fluctuated so much between feeling like I was finally getting in the groove, finding the right medication, the right dosage for me, having really productive days, to flip-flopping back to what felt like my old ADHD black hole of depression, heaviness, anxiety, self-judgment, negative self-talk, my body just feeling so sour and terrible. It was such an emotional tug of war, constantly going back and forth between having hope and feeling hopeless the next day. It just felt like I never really reached that consistency where I knew like, oh, I'm getting better. I'm finally getting some relief. I remember like so many days just begging the universe for some relief because I was hurting so badly. And of course I had the validation of my diagnosis at this point, so I knew like, girl, it's not me, it's my ADHD, but that doesn't negate any of the physical, mental, and emotional negative feelings that I was experiencing day to day that just made it so hard to hold on to that hope. I just want to read a couple pages from my journal while I was going through, and still am going through, this period of titration, as they call it, where you're finding the right dosage and the right balance for you post-diagnosis. This one passage I'm going to read right now was 3 months after my diagnosis. So I'd already been navigating this for quite some time, and I was still really struggling. So this is what I wrote. One day I'll forgive myself for something that isn't my fault. There's so much relief knowing that this will someday be true. I'll harness my power and come into me, the me that I know, but also wiser, more self-compassionate, accepting, understanding, forgiving. The me I was born as was born with this brain. I'm meant to be myself because of my beautiful strength, vulnerability, and authenticity. My path, it's about being true to myself and paving my way home to my heart. My heart's been close to myself, and that governs everything else about my experience. Freaking true. There is a woman inside of me who has been there all along, nurturing me and pushing me forward during the darkest, most painful times. If I don't love me now, how will I ever become her? Whew, I wasn't expecting to get emotional reading this back. I can just remember exactly what place I was in when I wrote this 3 months ago, and it's not that far off from where I am now. And I just remember starting that process of shedding the guilt that I've been carrying for the way that I am. Let me explain that a little bit. I feel like my whole life, the things that I have viewed as character flaws, I've learned in the past year and a half are actually symptoms of my ADHD. So I've been carrying around guilt for the past 30 years for not being a certain way because I didn't know that my brain was different than the neurotypical brain. I've tried so hard to fit into certain molds that were deemed necessary by society, by my peers, by comparison. So many times when I've tried to go against my authentic self for something that's more societally acceptable and more conforming to other people's ideas of success, I've just felt so much resistance. And when I was writing this, I started thinking about all these ways that I was judging myself and almost like shame stacking, like piling all these different reasons for shame on top of each other. And I just had this realization, like, this person that I imagine myself to be in the future, that I dream of being, that I can just like feel and see that's within reach somewhere far off in another galaxy or universe, is here. It's within me the whole time. She is the one that's pushing me forward to pursue new things, to follow my intentions, to be aligned with my instinct. I just feel like there's been so many lessons for me within the space of my post-diagnosis in really learning about like what matters to me, who I am as a person, and what's gonna really support that growth rather than hinder it. Okay, so I have another passage that I wanna read here. This is from the end of December, right before the new year. I said, I was getting so sad and frustrated, feeling like my depression was forging on and my ADHD symptoms were getting no relief. Finally, last week I picked up the Adderall script, took 20 milligrams one day, and I had such a good day. I remember this so well. I did so much that I've been putting off for weeks. I felt like I was in the zone and didn't feel the normal obstacles to getting shit done. I don't even think my issue before was my relationship with productivity. My mind and my body would feel so down and disconnected that it felt like a drag to do everyday tasks. Ever since then, I felt like I can handle everyday life. Okay, can we just talk about the medication struggle with ADHD? We are, by the way, in the midst of a massive stimulant shortage across the entire world. So that means that people all over the world haven't had access to their extremely life-dependent stimulant medications that they need to function as an everyday person without the stress and the weight and the anxiety that comes with having a neurodivergent brain. And that's something that I was really craving and looking for, just like relief, like some relief. I'm begging you for relief. So when I finally got this diagnosis, I immediately encountered the extreme obstacle of the stimulant shortage. So there were only like a smattering of medications that were available. So we were going back and forth, dealing with insurance, dealing with the pharmacy. I feel like every single time I had hope for that medication being the right one, I hit an obstacle. Every freaking time. Either the medication was unavailable because of the shortage, my insurance wouldn't cover it, so it was completely out of pocket. Nothing was easy, nothing was straightforward. I've been on different dosages of Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta, all working with the random smattering of dosages that are available to try to find my right fit. It has been near impossible to have the consistency to figure out what the right one is for me. The Adderall that I finally felt like was the right fit for me wasn't even freaking available the next month. So I wasn't able to continue that dosage that finally felt good for me and continue to explore how it would cumulatively affect me in the long run. So then I switched to Concerta. Concerta with insurance is $200 per month on my plan with insurance. I legitimately can't even tell you how many times I've cried over the struggle and the journey of getting ADHD medication. It has been an unreal roller coaster with no consistency, no stability. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm the most frustrated with how this process is so anti-neurodivergent. Any of these steps that anyone has to go through to get the support, the medication that they need is usually a months-long process involving multiple step processes that inherently are not friendly to ADHD folks. I also feel like these inconsistencies and inaccessibility of medications right now for folks with ADHD goes deeper than just treating your ADHD. I'm sure y'all have heard all about the comorbidities of ADHD. If you're not familiar, it's basically other mental and emotional struggles that coincide with your ADHD. Sometimes they can be as a result of your undiagnosed and untreated ADHD, and sometimes you're just lucky enough to have a Mary Poppins bag full of all of them at once. Over the past 6 months, I honestly have gotten no closer to finding out, is my depression from ADHD or is it just a part of me? Because the constant up and down, the fluctuation, the mood swings, the body reactions, the challenges with motivation, all of those have just been continually fueling my depression and my anxiety that makes me wonder, is this a part of me or is this branching from my ADHD? On that note, another thing that I wrote in January that I want to share goes like this. Last week, I was having a few bad days in a row and was feeling really down on myself. Helpless, hopeless, worthless, begging for some relief so badly, feeling terrible and heavy in my body, negative self-talk circulating my brain. Last Wednesday was a particularly bad day in which I couldn't get out of the negative headspace, and my body also felt horrible. It's hard to explain, but I feel my depression all over, not just mentally. Anyway, this depression has been bringing out my worst insecurities, that I'm not good enough, I'm too broken to love, I'm not beautiful, I'll never be successful, I'm not driven enough. Enough. Placing my worth in what I should be instead of who I am. I'm trying to navigate away from shoulds more, since they just stem from judging myself. Layering judgment over a feeling or reality does not change that said reality. It only perpetuates shame. I think one of the darkest parts of ADHD after diagnosis that people don't talk about is the welling up of insecurities. When I think about my relationship with myself post-diagnosis, I just want to give myself a big hug. I want to finally reach that place of forgiveness and embracing who I truly am, because I am so far from that. I feel like starting this YouTube journey is really part of that process in learning self-compassion again, learning my self-worth, and doing things that really fuel me and do give me that dopamine burst. Looking back on the past 6 months, I remember being in a place where it was so hard for me to imagine getting better, because amidst having this newfound knowledge of myself and confirmation of why I was the way I was also the continuing symptoms of ADHD. And to be honest, because I now knew the association with my neurodivergent brain with some of my actions and habits, I honestly feel like some of my ADHD symptoms got even worse, because now I was hyper-focusing on all of the ways that I was feeling imbalanced, hoping for an improvement every single day, not getting that improvement, not getting that relief. Just felt like this endless cycle of suffering. And for any of you guys that also experience ADHD and depression in your body somatically, it's hard to explain it, but the way that I would frame it is my body will feel sour. I don't know how else to explain it, but my head will just feel sour, my stomach will feel sour, my body will feel sour. It's weird. I really can't think of any other adjective besides that. And being in pain. I don't think a lot of people talk about the physical symptoms that ADHD presents. For me, it can absolutely be debilitating for the day, even for multiple days. And if there's any advice that I can share with you while I'm still in the throes of this, you are the only person that's going to get you through this, and somewhere inside you is that future version of yourself that is edging you forward, that's holding your hand through the darkness in those times when you're suffering so much that you can't even give yourself the love that you need to see hope for the future. Just know that you're still here for a reason, okay? I'm really lucky that my depression never manifested into suicidal ideations or anything, but I can tell you the hopelessness that I felt when I just wasn't getting better was this endless pit. It was all consuming. It would take over my entire thought process and would just weigh me down for days at a time. Somewhere in there was this little beam of light in me that was persisting through the darkness that was saying, you deserve to find your way home back to yourself, and you will. Everything that you've been through has been building this foundation of strength, this foundation of resilience, this foundation of finding out who your real authentic self is. And that foundation is what's going to keep you standing when the entire world feels like it's constantly shifting underneath your feet. The reality of my ADHD post-diagnosis is that it's just as hard. If anything, I've had to work even harder to have those moments of self-compassion, self-love, enforcing my self-worth, finding joy in everyday things. Unfortunately, not every ADHD post-diagnosis story is going to be an overnight success story. Not everyone is going to have that immediate connection with a medication and dosage. Not everyone's going to be able to access a psychiatrist right away. It literally took me 8 months to even get my first appointment with my psychiatrist and get my diagnosis journey started. Not everyone's going to immediately have their life do a 180 and start to experience all of the positive sides of life again. It's a little bit more realistic to share with you guys that many of you, including myself, are going to be continuing to experience our ADHD symptoms, if not more so, post-diagnosis. This is definitely more of a downer video today. Normally I like to coat my suffering in humor, and it's definitely one of my coping mechanisms. But honestly, I just wanted to keep it fucking real because with all of the like quirky and funny and whimsical sides of us that comes with ADHD, there's also like so much darkness, so much suffering, so much pain. If you're feeling in limbo after your ADHD diagnosis like me, just know that the future you is guiding you through all those little steps and actions that you're taking to give yourself more love and to get through this period of unknown and uncertainty. You've made it this far without even knowing that you had a neurodivergent brain for probably most of your life. Please hang on and keep on trucking, because I promise you, and I'm promising myself, that the other side of this is going to be the most beautiful life that we could ever imagine. A life where we're connected to ourselves, a life where we're living our truest path, feeling that zest for life again that makes living so beautiful and so raw and not only rooted in the pain that we feel right now. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Stay weird, stay beautiful, and keep holding on to that light inside of you. We're gonna get through this. Tony! Don't forget to subscribe if you want more sometimes weird, sometimes heartfelt, and always chaotic content from me.